Alright guys, you're welcome back to the Introductory Biology Series, and today we are starting out with characteristics of living things. And these are some of the things that every organism has that certifies them as living, because sometimes the term living things can actually be hard to define. So we now built up some characteristics that has been observed in everything considered living, and all of them have this in common, so we are going to look at them one after the other. The first one is respiration. All right, every living thing respires. That means taking in a biological process or a biochemical process of taking in air and using the oxygen in this air to break down food and release energy. So we could simply call it breathing in and breathing out. So it can be defined as a biochemical process by which the air we breathe is used to break down food substances in order to release energy, thereby giving out carbon dioxide and water as end products. That's why we breathe in oxygen and we remove carbon dioxide. Now, this energy that is produced in this process is used for many processes inside the body of the organism. So you can see a representation of that here on the screen. We have the respiratory system of a man, then of course the gills in the fish, and then we have the trachea in the insects. For man, we use lungs. Okay, so we go to the next one. We have nutrition. Every living thing must feed, actually. All right, so it is the ability of organisms to feed. Living things eat in order to carry out life processes like growth, respiration, reproduction. And green plants, though, manufacture their own food through a process called photosynthesis. So because they produce their own food, we call them autotrophs. All right, auto means by its own. All right, so they produce their own food, but animals depend either directly or indirectly on plants. So they are heterotrophic in nature, so they carry out heterotrophic nutrition. What we mean by directly in plants is that they could feed directly on those vegetables, or indirectly they could feed on herbivores that feed on grasses. So you find out that either ways they are depending on what? Plants. Okay, so we have the next one, growth. Every living thing must increase in size and in mass. So you can't remain small for a very long time. You were once born as babies, now you have grown into an adult or into a teenager, and then gradually into an adult. So growth is the permanent increase in size and mass of an organism. So growth, this also happens in order to replace damaged or old tissues in the body. So the food we eat provide the basis for this growth. All right, both in plants and in animals. Obviously, they must grow, and every living thing can react to are sensitive to stimulus. All right, you can see the diagram of somebody who probably touched something hot. So this is the ability of organisms to respond to stimulus. The stimuli can either be the hot object or somebody pinched you, so you get to react to this. If you're not sensitive in some type of way to your environment, then you most likely may not survive in that environment. So we call it irritability or sensitivity. All right, this enables them to survive in the environment, sense when there is danger, and then know how to react or respond to the environment. Then every living thing must excrete, so we call it excretion. This is the removal of metabolic waste from the body. Example, water, carbon dioxide, tannins, urea. So metabolic waste, every living thing must find ways of removing waste from their body, else it will accumulate to a dangerous level and they are all going to die. Then we have movements. Every living thing moves. All right, maybe for plants they don't have physical movements where they carry out their whole bodies and move from one point to another, but plants actually move by moving parts of their bodies. All right, that's why you see their arms or the branches growing and responding to the sunlight, moving towards the sun so that they can be able to carry out photosynthesis. For us animals, we can actually use our legs and move around from one place to another. So every living thing moves either its whole body or part of its body, as the case may be. Most plants move from one place to another, most animals move from one place to another, while plants can only move parts of their bodies. So living things move around either to look for food or mates or move away from a dangerous environment. Then reproduction, this is the ability of living things to produce young ones. Okay, you exist in now because your parents gave birth to you, so we tend to reproduce young ones so that our generations will continue. So reproduction occurs in two forms. It could be asexual, like in the case of smaller animals, and it could be sexual, which could involve a sex cell of a man and sex cell of a woman coming together to produce a young one. Now, if it is asexual, one parent can divide and then give rise to new daughter cells. Like in the case of the amoeba here, you could see the amoeba. This is the mother cell here, and then at the end of the day, it divides into two. This is called binary fission. Divides into two to have what? Two daughter cells. But the funny thing here is that the parent cell no longer exists, all right, because it has divided to form what? The new daughter cells. But in sexual reproduction, example in man, we have specialized cells that can actually help us with that. Then you have the man presenting the sex cell, and then the woman, let's just call it the male version of the organism bringing a sex cell, and the female bringing a sex cell, and then there is fertilization, and then the birth of a new being or an offspring. So every living thing must do what? Reproduce, either sexually or asexually. Now, there are a few differences between plants and animals, so we are going to go through that differences. All right, so many differences, even though they are both living, but they obviously have obvious differences. The first one is that in plants the growth is indefinite and apical. All right, so the growth is indefinite and apical. This simply means that it grows at the tip of the roots and the tip of the shoots, while the shoots here is any part of the plants that is above the ground surface, the ones that you can see, and the roots are the ones that go deep into the soil. And then indefinite means a plant can continue to grow different branches as much as possible, while that of animals, the growth is definite and intercalary, meaning it is balanced. All right, your head grows as much as your hands so that everything can be balanced. You don't grow at the tip. All right, and then definite is that you have a definite number of parts that you need to grow. And the second one is that they have no fixed number of parts. Like I earlier mentioned, branches can crop up from any branch, and then for the animals we have a fixed number of parts that we need to grow, and they are compact. So for the plants, they don't have any special sense organ. All right, so at some point they don't feel pain. You can use a knife and cut it and stuff like that. But for the animals, they possess well-developed sense organs. Okay, so if anything hurts us, we react to it. That's for the animals. And then for plants are not active and no organ of movement, so they have no active organ of movement. That, like I mentioned earlier, plants do not move their whole body parts from one place to another, but animals can actually move their whole body from one place to another. Now, they possess no special excretory system, while animals possess special well-developed excretory system, like our kidneys, which helps us to do that. In fact, we have an excretory system. When you get to that topic, that should be in your classes ahead. When you do excretory system, you see that we have a developed group of organs that are functioning to ensure that we remove waste from our body. And then we have the plants store food mainly as starch, while animals store food mainly as glycogen and fats. Most green plants are photosynthetic. That means they are autotrophic in nutrition, meaning they produce their own food. Animals do not produce their own food. Animals depend on plants, so they are heterotrophic in nature. And plants have large vacuoles. That's the plant cell have very large vacuoles, while that of the animals do not contain large vacuoles. And then we have gaseous exchange is through the entire body of the plant, while we have specialized organs for gaseous exchange, which is our lungs, obviously. While the plants, it happens all over the body. All right, we'll stop at this point. Thank you very much if you have followed up to this point, and make sure that you get to click on our next topic where we'll be treating the microscope. Thank you, and keep liking, sharing, and following.